Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Space Station Zero, the latest of the miniatures agnostic skirmish games from Snarling Badger Studios that they kindly sent along as a complimentary copy for me to review. So, what do we got here? Well, we have a print on demand, 120 page black and white like skirmish game for I'm going to say like roughly 10 to 15 miniatures on a 22 by 30 board. So leaning into that kill team size board that's become popular obviously with Games Workshop hobbyists, and using any models you want in a points-free, make your own warband and either play solo or cooperatively in an abandoned space station style game. It's got some lovely illustrations, and I actually really want to shout out the artist here. Will Kirkby, it's Chomonkey on Twitter. Beautifully illustrated. It's got kind of a Jeff Darrow kind of aesthetic to it with all the gizmos and like little detail. But as cool as I think the cover is, it's a wonderful modern sort of like cartoon style. I think it translated really well to the black and white on the inside of the book. And for a print-on-demand book, having a quality like black and white layout, it's got a real kind of 80s feel to it, and Adam did a really good job with the layout, making this feel, I'll be honest, this feels kind of like a Riffs book. It's got a real Kevin Simbita sort of like jive to it. There's only a little bit of miniature photography also in black and white, and it's kind of been like, again, altered in like Photoshop to make it a little more blended. But it's little things like this, like these little illustrated like guns and stuff like that. The diagrams and the art style, I think, go together really well. And it's subtle, but for a black and white print job, I think that this is it has a lovely layout. So Adam did a really good job with that. So let's jump in and give you an overview of the game. It's only got like 2 pages of actual background, but that feels intentional. The idea being that basically every once in a while, a spaceship makes a jump into outer space and disappears. And most of the times it's obliterated. Every once in a while it arrives next to a giant space station, and there's a docking message that says, Space Station Zero will accept you. So dock, and then come explore. And this has kind of a Blam sort of a feeling to it. If you've never seen Blam, it's basically a mega structure where there's kind of people living inside it, but the people are sort of incidental. Most people have kind of transitioned to like a digital world or digital life, and the thing looks derelict, but it's so enormous. It's bigger than a planet. It's like the size of a solar system. It's a city so big that you could never get to the end of it, and you're journeying through it. Kind of the idea of Space Station Zero. There's sort of an encampment of just like bars, it feels like, where all the space pirates all get together and drink. And they're so bored that they can either just descend into alcoholism or go and explore the derelict space station. So they go and explore it and try and find stuff. And yeah, so what do you need? Well, you need a 22 by 30 play area. So basically use your game board or mark off an area. 5 to 9 miniatures for your crew. 10 to 12 miniatures to represent enemy figures or encounters. 3 to 5 pieces of science fiction or industrial terrain. 10 to 12 sided dice, which I'll be honest, that's one thing I think might be a challenge here. 12-sided dice weirdly aren't that common. You can buy them on like Amazon and stuff like that, but you can't just go to your game store usually and be like, I'd like a bucket of 12-sided dice. You usually have to buy like packs of polyhedral dice. So I just happen to be one of those weirdos that has tons of 12-sided dice, and I didn't even buy these for Alpha Strike, which you've seen me play them with a lot, Battletech, because we tried playing them with D12s, which is a lot of fun, speeds up the gameplay. But I actually bought these for Horizon Wars. This was back in like 2017, 2016, ages ago. But it uses a opposed dice pool system of D12s with an even odds mechanic for pass, fail, and then challenge numbers. That sounds like gobbledygook to you. I grabbed dice to actually demonstrate it because I think probably the thing that might be the hardest for people to have sink in is the way that the dice challenge system works. It's not super intuitive, but when you actually see it done, you pick it up really fast. You need a tape measure, so yeah, and a complete play roster. There's a blank roster on snarlingbadger.com. So, glossary terms. This is all standard boilerplate for playing games, like how do you activate a model, a challenge or a challenge test. So a challenge is the thing you're trying to do. The challenge test is the dice roll and what you're required to do it, and usually number of successes as well. Close attacks, anything within 1. There's no equipment in this. There can be like traits and things that you gain from equipment, but typically you just have, are you either fighting up close or fighting far away? So it doesn't matter what your miniature's armed with. That's a valuable trait in miniatures agnostic games, and this is a pretty lean rule system, so Range is over 1 inch, close is 1 inch. And then co-op game, your crew is your miniatures. Critical success and critical failure. When you roll a dice pool, a critical success is if any of your dice, any 2 or more of your dice are 12s, it's a critical. Critical failure is if any 2 or more of your dice are 1s. And a critical success does cancel a critical failure. So if you roll your whole pool of dice and you get 2 or more 1s, then the whole thing is moot and you lose the roll. But if you get 2 12s, then it's always going to be a success. And your success is double, which is cool too. And then things like dice, D12s. A knowledge shard is MacGuffins that you can pick up when you're inside the space station. Extended challenge test, you have to keep making them until one side grinds away. Your edge is like a cool little gimmick that your crew gets. Life is your life stat, your move stat. You got your intelligence stat, you got your reaction stat. Reaction stat is your ability to get out of the way and stuff like that. And that's usually how many rolls of successes need to be done to hit you. Or it's used opposed during an opposed roll. Your save. Some challenge tests will be in the form of a stat save. So like if you go into a room full of, and it's like decompressing, let's say, you might have to make a life test of 3. So that means you roll a number of dice equal to your life stat. And all the evens are successes. So I got 2, 2, 12. I got 3 successes. So if it was a life 3 check, I need at least 3 successes, not take any damage. For each one I missed, right, if I got the 2 and the 12, I take a point of damage. So if I only got 1 success, I take 2 points of damage. If I got no success, I take 3 points of damage. That's a save tech, so there can be different ones for different environmental things. And then a single roll, that's a challenge test that's not opposed. So a single roll would be like, let's say I needed to do an intelligence check to unlock a door, and it was an intelligence check of 3. I'd roll my intelligence stat of 5. All the evens count as successes, so the 9s, the 11 and the 3 all go away. The 6 and the 10 would pass, and I wouldn't get it because I need at least 3 to succeed. But there's nobody trying to oppose it. In an opposed roll, you would roll an equal number of dice. Like let's say I was attacking somebody and I had a combat stat, blue dice, and save stat. The 2 is 1 success, the 11 and the 9 aren't. The 10 and the 8 are 2 successes, and the 1s aren't. So you'd oppose these, take out the difference. That's how much damage you take to your life stat. If it was a combat roll, for instance. All right, and then turns of the game. Examples of play, your stats, life, move, combat, reaction, intelligence. So it's a 5-stat game. They all do what they say on the tin. Life is how many hit points you take before you die. When you make life tests, though, it doesn't track your current life. So if you're damaged and stuff like that, like you need to make a life test, you use your base stat, not your adjusted stat for taking damage. Move is move in inches. Combat is when you attack something. Reaction is when you get attacked. And then intelligence is for interacting with objectives typically, or special effects. There can be psych powers too that use your intelligence stat as like your attack stat. So like if you're trying to like force crush someone with your mind, you use your intelligence stat to attack with. Challenges are anything you're trying to do. So challenges is when you're doing stuff. Examples of a challenge you might face is combating against a rogue robot or disarming a nanovirus bomb, avoiding a collapsing floor. So you might make a move challenge against, like collapsing to jump out of the way. And then activation. If this is a solo or co-op game, then the players always have the first activation, and then the bad guys go afterwards. If you play a skirmish game between 2 players, you roll off and roll ties. Now it does have an activation check. During each activation, a player or the players, if this is a co-op game, may choose a single crew member and perform a single action. The crew may be able to move a number of inches equal to their move stat for free on top. Crew member or enemy may activate and move without performing an action. Actions vary and are usually dictated by the challenge. So like you want to deactivate a bomb, you have to have a bomb in front of you. Making an attack is an action, and choosing to move a second time is also an action, as is making any kind of a challenge test. Under no circumstances can a crew member or enemy perform 2 actions, unless they're specifically allowed to by a special ability. So that's an awkward sentence. It should just say, normally, a crew member cannot perform 2 actions, but they can unless specified by a special ability. It's just a very decisive first sentence and then walks it back. When the crew members completed their activation, the players can then attempt to retain initiative. The player rolls a d12, and if they're rolling a 6+, rolling any number higher than a 6 on a d12, any number of 6 or higher on a d12, they may activate a different crew member. Now this is interesting because it's not a challenge, and I was a bit confused by this one first off. It's any number higher than a 6, not a challenge test needing challenge 6. So when you have a challenge number, so for instance, if you're doing a intelligence check challenge 8, you would roll your intelligence, let's say it's 5, And you would take any successes that are 8 or higher, right? So even if these 2s are successes, because they're not as high as 8, I'd normally, if it's an unopposed challenge, get 3 successes, but those go away and I get 1 instead. So worth questioning, I guess, if that's differentiated or not. So it's any number of 6 or higher on a D12. But then you can activate a different model. Additional crew member, if this is a co-op game, either player may activate a crew member. When their crew member has completed their activation, then it becomes a 10+. So basically, if you ever played, oh shoot, what was the game that Owen and I played a whole bunch of? Oh, I've already lost it. Rogue Stars. Rogue Stars had this exact same mechanic. It's basically from a Songs of Blade and Heroes. It's a very popular mechanic in his game system where you can keep pushing models to keep going as long as you can keep making the dice rolls. And when you fail, you take pin markers or stress in that game. This has the same mechanic. So you activate and then you always go first if you're playing solo and co-op, and then you push to keep going. And what that means is you don't get to gang up and jump on the AI. And there's a bit more randomness injected in the game. I like this mechanic personally because it means that there's no like gaming the system, and sometimes your guys just fail to go again, and you really need like 2 or 3 models to chain activate to pull off what you're trying to do, and the AI gets a jump on you. So having a system like this where there's a failure state for activating doesn't mean that your models don't get to activate. They all still get to activate over the course of a game turn, and potentially I think even do something again. Yeah, if you have a different additional crew member, so I can only get 1 action. Then you kind of falsify intelligence in the AI force, because the AI force can gain advantage kind of at random, and it creates a bit more narrative element. No single crew member can be activated more than once a single turn, unless allowed by a special ability or a rule from the challenge. Then once all crew members and enemies participating in the challenge have activated once, their turn's complete. So once you've done all of your crew, then the enemy would get to go with any remaining models. Free actions are considered usually part of a challenge. Challenge tests, you're trying to roll equal to your stat. Making a challenge test. Challenge tests are made by rolling a number of d12s equal to the stat in question. So if, for example, if you have a reaction stat of 4 and you're making a reaction test, you roll 4 d12s and keep all the evens, and each one's a success. An extended challenge test. Some challenge tests will require a very high number of successes, more than a single crew member is likely to achieve, and that means you can keep grinding away at them to get the numbers that you need. So, for example, your crew may be attempting to disarm a nerve gas bomb with a reaction 10 4+ test. You won't get it in 1, but you can keep score basically for the extended ones, and when you finally get them all, you can keep making actions and grinding away at it to finally get the number that you need. I already explained crit success and failures, 1s and 12s. Movement, measure inches, vertical movement counts as 2 inches of movement. You can jump with tests, which is a movement challenge test of 3. And you can jump 3-inch gaps. You can fall, you can fly. Combat, okay. So combat's pretty simple. It's either close if it's within 1 inch, and if it's range, it's over 1 inch. Close attacks are any specific attack made by a weapon within 1 inch, and only this is defined as a close attack. Range attacks are over 1 inch. If the target's attack is blocked completely by terrain or otherwise not visible, then the attacker may not make the attack. So you have to have line of sight for either of these. Combat steps. The attacker rolls a combat challenge test. Let's say your combat's 4. So you include any weapon modifiers. So I could have a combat of 4. If I have a cool gun, it might give me 2 extra dice. So I roll it. I check my successes. I got a 2, an 8, and a 12. So I got 3 successes here. All the odds go away. The defender then rolls a combat challenge test, including all modifiers, but the weapon does not apply to defense rolls. So if I have a combat of 3, but I have a cool gun that gives me 4 extra dice, I don't get them in this case. And then I get rid of my odds, so my 7 goes away, my 6 and my 2 stay. If the attacker and defender are tied on successes, no damage is dealt, but if the attacker has more, once you cancel them out, you take damage equal to the net successes. So it's a very, very similar system to, let's say, like Gamma Wolves, right, where you're using opposed dice pools, and as soon as you've got your countdown, whatever the net is applies damage. There are some cases where you get extras. So, like, for instance, if this included 2 12s, there can be a damage multiplier, right? These count as 2 successes. So if there was 12, 12, 4, and then the 6 and the 8, this is actually 6 successes, and these count as 2, so it would be those go away, and then you take 4 damage afterwards and just die. I'm 90% sure. It also might just be the critical dice that count as double. Let me just double check that again. Before I speak out of turn and say it's that good. The dice results of 1, 3, 5, 12, and 12. This would normally be a failure, but there's at least 4 successes, but because 2 successes are 12s, It's a critical success, ignores the requirement of 4. In combat, when making an attack, if the dice contain a critical success, this means that each success counts as 2 successes, potentially doubling the damage. Yeah, so it would count as 6 as opposed to just being 4. Healing damage brings your life stat back up. Hidden enemies. Some enemies are hidden when a challenge begins. Spotting a hidden enemy is a reaction challenge test with a successful number equal to the reaction stat of the enemy. So if you want to try and see them, you can like spot to attack somebody, basically. And then cover. Sometimes the best defense is to hide. High-tech lasers, you can be in cover. A model with cover from their attacker's point of view gets a bonus against ranged attacks. If they have cover, they increase their armor by 2 against what that attack. If the target of the attack is not wearing any armor of any kind, they're considered to have an armor of 4+. So like if 4+ armor means that when you shoot somebody, then you need the 4s to succeed. So like the 2s would go away basically. So that would still be 3 successes though, because each of these is higher than a 4+. Armor stat basically reducing the success pool from 50% down to whatever your armor stat is, or your difficulty stat. All right, creating a crew. This is the easy points free part of this game. Basically, you're gonna have 4, 6, or 8 models. And if you have 8 models, you have less guys with lower stats. If you have 4 models, you're Terminator Squad. You got great stats, and that's it. So you get 6 life, 4-inch move. Move you'll see is the same for everybody. But combat 4, reaction 4, intelligence 4, because they're like hardened veterans, versus a 6-person crew, which has combat 3, reaction 3, intelligence 3. You're probably best off with the 6-person crew. Action economy is still a thing in this game, right? The number of times you can do something is still going to be a thing. And the 8-person crew actually only goes down in combat and intelligence. The reaction stays the same, so they're actually fairly defensive for a lot of things. And then your ship type. This is a first layer of flavoring on your crew. If you're a medical ship, a science vessel, a warship, a shipping vessel, a pirate ship, an exploration vessel, these things give you access to different model types, basically like what kind of crew do you have. And then you also usually get a leader ability for your commander, a different like piece of equipment that you have, so you can select special equipment from different pools, and then available crew types. So everybody has access to most of the crew. Like almost everybody can take a soldier or medical officer, but certain things are more prevalent on certain ships, and you usually have a requirement for your crew, like at least 50% of a science vessel's crew need to be scientists. For medical crew, at least 50% of the medical crew must be from medical officers, and up to one of these may be a senior physician, which is like your leader 1. Or lead scientist. So there's kind of like an upgraded version of all the characters. I love the art on these pages. And then after that, you can buy your crew members. Now this is a bit reminiscent of Silver Bayonet, right? Where Joe basically laid out all the different nations. They had access to different soldier types. All of these are basically your different soldiers. So medical officers, soldiers, they get bonuses to their stats, so it kind of tailors your character model, and then gives them bonus ability and stuff too. So like for instance, a pilot, he gets +1 to his reaction, and his special ability is awareness. Whenever a pilot crew member makes a reaction challenge to avoid damage or spot a hidden model, they roll 2 additional dice. They're just good at doing that, a specific task. A veteran soldier, like if you're on a warship, you could be your leader. +2 combat. So combat could be like 6 if it was like the 4-man team. And whenever a veteran soldier suffers damage as a result of a combat action, reduce the damage by 1 to a minimum of 0, because they're just tough as nails. And then your edge. So for instance, armored force. All members of your crew have a power armor that provides armor 6. So that means when you attack them, only the 6s or higher succeed. So, critical hit though. So those go away, and that's a crit. Would do 4 damage, potentially. Shapeshifters. I like the nanotech one. Your life goes up by 1 every time you activate. Artificial life forms. Whenever a member of your crew is reduced to 0 life, they roll a d12 on a 9+, they come back with 1 life. And all additional damage gets negated because they're hard to kill. Warrior Born. All members of your crew are +1 to their combat stat. But you can do everything from like hive mind, you can have a Tyranid crew, through to like parasites. Whenever a crew member is reduced to 0 life, if there's a creature with a xenobiological type within 3 inches that is not already part of your crew, you can make a special life challenge test. Roll the life challenge as normal. If you do, the creature then rolls a movement challenge test. If your crew member has more successes, you have now taken over that creature. So the bug pops out of your head. It's the Star Trek episode with the weird monsters that crawl into your guts and take you over. And then general equipment, things you can hand out to people. So when you're creating your crew, you can select up to 1 equipment piece for each crew member and up to 3 other pieces of equipment total. You can choose these equipments to be from any table that you have access to in your ship type. So like general is available to everybody, but then like the medicine stuff is available to like the medical ship, science gear. It's like a hyper scanner for +2 dice to reaction challenge test for detection. Chem protection suit, reduce all damage suffered by chemical challenges by 2. So again, just like tailoring your guys. And then an optional rule for secondary agendas, things you're trying to do. And it's just basically a cool like storyline thing that you're trying to do out there. Sample crew. And then all these different challenges. So it's got your basic, I'm not gonna go through all of them because I don't want to spoil them. But basically you've got your enemy AI, so how the AI works. These remind me a little bit of the scenario writing from Forbidden Psalm, where you basically have a way of playing it cooperatively and solo, and then also against somebody. And they say challenges instead of missions, they're basically interchangeable. So going to the docking bay access port, there's your first one. So there's your 22 by 30 zone. All the things that are happening on it. So things like there's obstacles. They could be like a poison gas leap or a collapsing floor. You have to see what they are. Roll twice in the chart below and see what's happening. And then your poison gas leak, collapsing floor, and live conduits things. There's alien sentries. This access bay is guarded by robotic guards so ancient they're barely functional. Set up 6 alien sentries per crew participating in this challenge. So it can be 12 if there's 2 players. The ancient sentries are set up equally divided between the 2 zones marked E and E1 and E2. So basically there'd be 3 in each of these. Now the AI is relatively rudimentary. It's if the enemy has a crew member within 1 inch, they'll attack. And they do a close attack or a ranged weapon if they're not. If multiple crew members are within 1 inch, then you will attack the one with the lowest remaining life. If multiple crew members are tied for lowest life, randomly determine who gets attacked. If the enemy does not have a crew member within 1 inch, but they can see a crew member is armed with a ranged weapon, it'll move directly away from the nearest crew and it'll attack the closest crew member it can see. If the enemy does not have a crew member within 1 inch, is not armed with a ranged weapon, but it has a crew member or multiples within its move stat, it'll move in trying to go into melee. If the enemy does not have a crew member within 1 inch and is not armed with a ranged weapon, has no crew member within its move stat, and the inches it can see, it'll move twice towards the nearest enemy crew. So basically, they shoot you or they run towards you depending on what they have. So like for instance, these alien sentries are life 2, move 3, combat 3, reaction 2, and intelligence 1. They have jagged claws. So they have a close weapon with +1 combat. So they're combat 4 in melee, which means their AI thing is going to be to try and move towards you and make a melee attack. And if they can't, then try and double move towards you. And then ending a challenge. The challenge ends when all the enemies are defeated. Your crew discovers multiple exits leading out of the area and discusses which exit to take. Eventually, they decide to leave it up to chance. When your crew completes this challenge, roll on the table below. So see which challenge you go to afterwards. And so the idea here is that like each of these like kill team things are rooms. And you're going through them like you're going through rooms in like Warhammer Quest and you're clearing them as you go. So it's a bit like playing The Legend of Zelda, the original one, where like the screen slides to a new screen, you clear it, and then you roll to see where you go afterwards. Or playing through Blackstone Fortress, where you go from like challenge encounter to challenge encounter, and then does the challenge end. So as you go through them, ending the challenge, the end of every challenge, there'll be a list of potential exits from the bay. You must choose one, and your crews assumed to have explored other bays, pods, where there's no challenge or items of interest found. This proceed through the space station. So you just keep going through challenges. Some challenges will have a no return keyword at the end of the challenge. In the end of the challenge section, once you have defeated this challenge, you may no longer return to any previous challenge that you played through. You may return to future challenges you defeat as normal until you encounter an additional no return challenge. So basically, like, you go through to the end. So like the single exit for this one goes to challenge 4. And you play through them, and there's a whole bunch of these. They go through, I think there's 11 or 12 challenges overall. And the one thing I would have liked, I didn't notice it, there's like 20 or 30, 22, 23. Basically, they're all like dungeon rooms. The lab, these are the end challenges. So these are a bit like the objective rooms. Oops, sorry, that's the skirmish section. There you go, the engine room. So like the engine room, for instance, is like a final sort of like room, boss room. The control room, also kind of a final boss room. And there's no like exiting it when you're done, so ending the challenge. This goes back to the bay door. Sorry, this challenge ends when the control is defeated. The master system. Read this following before playing this challenge. You enter what seems to be a central computing room. The center of the room is a ball of bright white light. As you enter it, it flares to life and you feel something pushing against your mind. Setup, there's nothing left to set up. Obstacles, there's no more obstacles. The truth, read page 116, number 10 to learn the truth. So there's your paragraph 400 from Fighting Fantasy that you have to go to. Then skirmish challenge is how you play the game. With the whatchamacallit, the sort of like 2-player skirmish mode in mind. So only read this Following pages is directed by the game, otherwise you ruin the story for yourself. So this is the end, which I don't want to spoil, so I'm not going to go any further than that. But that's basically the idea. Is it's kind of like a dungeon crawler. It's procedural. You can pause at any point, continue exploring, go through. You don't, between games, hang on, let's just go to here. Between games, your edge, moving through challenges. Once you defeat a challenge you're exploring, you have cause to return to the challenge, i.e. to backtrack, take other exits, explore the directions to the space station. Unless stated otherwise, you can always backtrack through challenges. You don't need to play through that challenge again. So basically, you can keep like a map of your doors. You want to draw like your little fighting fantasy map and keep going through it. You can refer to future challenges as normal until you encounter an additional no return challenge. At the end of every challenge, you find a list of potential exits. And you can choose one to go through and always come back. Generate terrain, crew setup. Your crew and the crew of any or all co-op players is set up after all terrain, objectives, obstacles, and enemies are placed. And there's no discrete order for doing it. You just do it until somebody's dead. Now, what I couldn't really find in here, apart from the post-game injuries, is like a gear recovery thing. They might be in the individual challenges themselves. Some like boons, things you can find. But for the most part, what you're going to get is you're going to experience, and you're going to get injuries and death after each game. So your first step after each challenge is to make your naughty rolls. Enemies out of action, you got to roll 4, roll once in the table below. For each crew member that was put out of action, removed from play. Once you've determined the fate of all crew members are healed to full life. So basically, you walk into a room and you get all your heal points back. It's assumed that between challenges, crew members are able to use basic medical care to repair wounds. So 2d12 roll double ones, you're dead. See page 114, number 1, but it's dead question mark. 3 to 5, worse for wear, but permanently reduce all your stats by 1. 6 to 11, dead and gone, you're dead. 12 to 17, full recovery. 18 to 20, recovery time. 21 to 23, unexpected recovery. And 24, it's a miracle. Crew member lives and increases all their stats by 1. So it's a 2d12 roll. It's not a challenge test. You're adding them together, and you get, basically the bell curve is going to put you into full recovery most of the time. Step 2, experience. Once you determine who's lived the challenge, you get experience. Apply any experience granted by the challenge. Each crew member that survives gains an experience point. Your commander gains a bonus experience point if they survive the challenge. And if you gain any knowledge shards, gain the relevant ability from where the knowledge shard is. So your MacGuffin that you find. And then once you apply the experience above, check against the tables below to determine if your crew members advance. Refer to the appropriate table below based on your commander or other crew members. So your commander experience table. Increase a single stat of choice by 1 for 7. And it's basically like buying XP upgrades in Necromunda. It's almost the same exact thing. Skill expertise, when your commander makes a non-combat challenge test, roll an additional die. 21, increase a single stat of your choice by 1. 28, determine leader. Once per challenge, once your commander activates, you can choose to retain initiative without rolling. So you basically get a bonus extra guy activating. And then 35, increase a single stat by 1. So these are all cumulative. It's not like a purchase. They don't take you down. But at 7, 14, 21, 28, and 35, your commander gets those. At your crew level, 5, 10, 15, 25, and 30, you get move up by 1, life or move, then combat reaction or intelligence, then life or move by 1. Increase the crew members' combat reaction or intelligence by 1, and then increase crew members' life or move by 1. So actually, it's a bit more range as a Shadow DP, I guess, than Necromunda E, where like at certain levels you gain certain bonuses and you get to choose. So it's like a divergent skill path, right? You choose one reaction or combat, and you level your gap as appropriate for whatever the model is. And that's it. So there you go, Space Station Zero. It's basically a tabletop fighting fantasy novel with miniatures agnostic rules. The one thing I would have liked, which I didn't find in here, is a model list. I guess between games as you clear rooms, but you're probably going to play multiple rooms in a row because they don't take that long to clear. You'd kind of want to have like a generic idea of what miniatures to have. This is something that Joe started doing early on in Rangers games, where it's like, you might not need all of these, but when you play through these, so you don't spoil the next chapter of the story, like reading too far ahead to see what models you want to have, here's the things that tend to populate the station. So here, go find these. I would have liked that. That's, I think, my only real like nitpick about Space Station Zero so far. I love the idea of it being like a procedural kind of, it's either Silver Towery, fighting fantasy, use whatever alliteration you want, where there's like a, or Blacksmith Fortress, where there's like an exploration system and you're going kind of like board to board. The games themselves are relatively quick because there's not a lot of stuff on the table, and it scales based upon your amount of players that you have, right? So you double the amount of bad guys every time you bring a new crew in, which is nice. You can play it solo or cooperatively. I like there's a skirmish modes. You can play head-to-head if you want as well, but the feature being on the story-driven stuff is really cool. But yeah, for being miniatures agnostic, having a bit of prep for when you go to play the campaign, you might want to have these particular miniatures in this particular amount per player available. Means that you're not having to like stop your campaign because all of a sudden your miniature collection doesn't have anything in it that you require, and then moving on into the next mission. So you don't get any sort of like forced breaks if you've got stuff like prepped and ready to go. But overall, love the art style, love the layout. Nice, simple like core game mechanic, right? Just like a action and push activation mechanic with a simple AI. The failure state, like in Rogue Stars, being that you get to have the guys go afterwards. And yeah, it looks like it's gonna be fun. So I'll definitely play through it. I don't know how I'm gonna skin it. I was eyeballing my Mercs minis the other day and I was like, maybe I'll use these. But then I was also eyeballing all of my like human interface minis. I don't know. I want to use this as an excuse to paint something fun like this. The Jeff Darrow-ness of this is appealing to me. I like the art style for this, and it makes me want to do that. So I'm probably gonna read ahead and not read ahead for you guys. Like I'll read ahead through the mission stuff and see what kind of miniatures I need to collect to do this, and then do a playthrough until either my crew all dies or we find the truth. So anyway, big thanks to Adam for sending along a copy of the book to review, and for you guys for watching. Thanks on Ash. Happy reading. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that video. There are tons of other games already recorded for you to watch. Click over to my channel page if you haven't already, and have a look through the dozens of playlists full of videos. I guarantee you'll discover a game you haven't seen played before. I put out new videos 7 days a week, and every day is themed to a different genre as I continue to explore the wider world of gaming. Of course, none of that's possible without you, the viewer, so click a like and subscribe if you'd like to stay on top of what's happening here daily. My 2 kids and I are massively grateful to be able to have the flexibility of this job so I can always maximize my time with them. If you want to support me continue to put out this content, it's only possible because of my amazing backers on Patreon who support the studio, equipment, and model cost, as well as being how I make the bulk of my living. You can also help out by buying a t-shirt through Spreadshirt, a measuring gauge or widget from Death Ray Designs, or buying one of my games and supplements like Last Days, Gamma Wolves, and Blaster. As a way of showing my appreciation, patrons get early access to new games and supplements that I write throughout the course of the year. Huge thanks for watching, it really does help out, and happy gaming.